Okay, let's see if I can get you an example on how to use UV Master to texture your characters. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to take Thor and we're going to just get down to the part that we want to texture. We're going to do his leg here. So I've already got them separated, but I need to convert them into separate polygroups. So what we're going to do here is go ahead and separate the polygroups. So bear with me here. Using the pen lasso tool, select the leg, Control W, convert it to a new polygroup, rotate it around, get another better look using the pen select tool here, lasso tool, and Control W give me a polygroup. And then I'm going to go back to the mask pen tool because I'm going to need it later on. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is split the subgroup or split the polygroups here. And we do a group split, and then after we do the group split, we'll select one of the legs and start working on that. Okay, we'll select this leg and turn on solo mode and frame it up so I can get a good look at it. Rotate it around. Now, the problem is it's 1.8 million points, so we need to reduce it. I'm going to use Decimation Master to reduce it. You could do ZBrush, you could use Dynamesh with a smaller, but I find Decimation Master at least holds the position, holds the shape, but reduces the number of points. And the reason you want to reduce the number of points is UV Master works quicker if you have fewer points. If you have a lot of points, it'll take you forever. Okay, so we're going to retake that 1.8 million and get it down into the 300 range, 370 here. And now we'll just go ahead and go to UV Master. Now, one of the things that I like to do is I like to look at my object, and especially in this case, like he's wearing a pair of pants, really. So you know that it's going to have a seam. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a draw in where that seam's going to be with the attract. And so that's roughly the direction the seam's going to follow. Then I'll unwrap it. And once it's unwrapped, we will go in and we'll start adding the surface to it. Bear with me, we're waiting for this thing to start. UV Master is not fast at all. It takes a while, and I'm actually editing some of this out just for you because we'll be waiting a while and I don't have that much to say. So once this is done unwrapping, we'll continue on. Okay, now that it's unwrapped, from there we're going to go ahead and start to add surface texture to it. So we go down to surface and we will click noise and zoom in and frame it up and zoom in, rotate it around, take a good look at it. Now, the next step is we find the alpha that we want. So we're going to go find a weave pattern. I've got several textures. I collect them as I find them. Now the important thing about the texture is it needs to be seamless. So when you search, when you do a Google search or however you find your texture, make sure you find a seamless texture. That way it'll match up and no matter how you tile it. And we're going to be doing some tiling here. So we'll use this one. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to strengthen it so we can see it. And you'll notice that it's still got this surface noise, so we're going to take that surface noise out. So all we get is nothing but the alpha. Turn on the UV mapping, and as if you notice, you can see the seam that runs down the leg where I chose it. We reduce the size and strengthen it, and we're going to over strengthen the amount of texture. It's going to be over textured, and I'll show you why we do that here in a second. Once we like it, we say okay, it applies it, and we rotate it around, take a look at it in all directions, make sure everything's fine. And if you notice, it's only got that one seam. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to divide so we can get more poly points in there, because it wouldn't hold it. And the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to mask out the areas that we don't want that surface, because since it's going to have bootstraps there, we're going to just go ahead and mask all that out. I'm going to turn on the knee guards so I can actually see where I need to stop. Turn the knee guards on, and we'll start masking out the leg again. And where you draw your mask basically takes the texture off. Get all the parts, and then obviously, since it's just the mask, if you erase the mask, it'll bring the texture back. But first we're going to do all this masking here. It'll take a second. Okay, we got some bleed over, reduce our brush down, erase that mask, get our texture back in. Alright, now need to erase the texture here, because that's where it's going to be joining to the torso. So we'll take all this off. And we got bleed over again, reduce our brush down, erase that mask again. Now, we added more polygon points, or polygons, however you choose to look at it, back to the leg, because once we have the mask done, once we have the masking done, we're going to go ahead and apply this surface to the leg. So go down to surface and hit apply to mesh. Now you'll notice that once it applies to the mesh, it's not nearly as pronounced as it was. That's why we over strengthened it, because when it applies to the mesh, it has a tendency not to be as strong as it was. Okay, now that we've got the mesh there, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to turn on our original one, our original leg, which is there. It has no texture applied to it. And we're going to turn off everything else, because now we're going to project that texture that's on this leg back to the original leg. So we go down to project all and project all. I've got some painting done. That's why it's asking me about the poly paint. I did some painting just to get color into it to see what it looked like. So we project all. I've edited this down a little bit because it takes a while as well. So once it's projected, you will see that it's moved it on. Now there's the painting that I did. I'll turn that painting off so we can look straight at it, and it's using a skin shade. We'll go back to matte gray so you can see what it looks like. Now, you're wondering about that seam that's there that I drew. Like I said, I look at everything a lot like he's wearing pants. I mean, I don't think of it being knitted. I think of it more of it's been sewn together. So we'll go to the matte gray, and then we're going to go ahead and load in a seam brush. I've bought all the ones from Gumroad, these seam brushes from Gumroad, and I love them. They were cheap and they were worthwhile, and it definitely has some really good stitching in it. I tend to use 14, seam 14. There's a bunch of them. I tend to use seam 14. Right now I'm trying to decide, and 14 is the one that looks more like a blue jean seam, I guess, but a single stitched blue jean seam. And I'm just going to take that, I'm going to make it a size 20, which seems to me to be an appropriate size for the modeling that I do. And I'm just going to follow that seam that I've already drawn, and it will give it a it'll hide the fact that the texture doesn't match up exactly right. Now, I overwent, so you know, I really ought to just I'll just mask off that area. It'll be easier if I just mask it off. Reverse it, and that way I can keep from bleeding over. Now, obviously the seams matter, whether they go up or down depends on the direction that you draw it, or if you go in and adjust it. So anyway, there's the seam. I'll clear the mask and it'll be done. This is pretty much it. Frame it up, take a look at it. Now that's the original one. Now obviously another thing to do would be to put a seam on the opposite side. So there you have it.